2 in the morning. Glad you're here. Imagine for a moment, if you will, an average-sized hammer pounding in an average-sized nail. There's nothing significant about it. It doesn't feel extremely difficult, and it doesn't feel extremely easy. It's just normal. Now imagine a sledgehammer, a lot of weight, a lot of mass, pounding in a very, very thin nail. That nail is going to almost feel like it's going in by itself. As a matter of fact, you can just take the hammer and almost touch the nail. Hey everyone, it's Nick with the Whip Shop. Welcome back. The analogy I just made about the hammers and the nails applies to whips. Particularly, the whip itself corresponds to the hammer, and the nail corresponds to the end of the whip. So the average sized nail is referring to a whip with a 4-point fall hitch or a 6-point fall hitch. Average sized hammer, 6-foot whip, 7-foot whip, maybe an 8-foot whip, nothing too heavy, nothing too light, just average. The sledgehammer, on the other hand, represents a whip that is long, perhaps 10 feet, perhaps 12 feet, with a lot of mass, maybe 3 plaited bellies. It's got some meat to it. The sledgehammer pounding in that little thin nail is the equivalent to having a big, thick, heavy whip with a really fine point at the end. It's going to feel like it's cracking itself, or at least that's what I hope. When I throw out words such as effortlessly cracking, that implies that I've already got the loop going. Of course, it's going to be harder to throw a 12-foot whip or a 10-foot whip and get that momentum going than it is going to be on a 6-foot whip. But once you do so, that loop is going to carry out. All the work has already been done. The whip takes care of the rest, and it's going to feel like it's cracking itself. We're going to be doing a tapered twist today on the end of a 10-foot bull whip. So before we get started on the build, I want to touch briefly on the pros and cons of each. Tapered twist versus conventional fall hitch. The pros. A tapered twist is lighter, it's thinner, and it's going to slice through the air better, and it's going to contribute to an easier crack. It's going to feel like it's a little bit easier to crack. The cons are that because you have less strands there, it is susceptible to wearing out quicker because there are 2 strands. Another con to the tapered twist is that it's a little bit difficult to tie on a new fall if you need to do so. It's not impossible, it just takes a little more time than the conventional fall hitch. Conventional fall hitch, the pros. I think personally it looks better than a tapered twist. That's just me. I think it looks cleaner. I think it looks better. Strictly cosmetic, and an opinion at that. Another pro is, on the contrary, there are more strands there and it's going to be a little bit tougher because there's more meat as opposed to less on the tapered twist. The whip won't wear out as quick, and tying on a new fall is less time consuming and easy to do. Whenever anybody would order from me a whip 10 feet or 12 feet long, I never really thought about putting a tapered twist on it because the whip was already heavy enough to where it had no problem swinging a 4-point or 6-point fall hitch fast enough to deliver a crack. So this is something new for me. I've not done this before. It was a special request from my client. So we're going to have fun, and we're going to see how it works. If you guys are interested in building a whip just like the one in today's video, please watch my tutorial from a couple of years ago. It's all about building a 12-foot 20-plat bull whip with 3 plaited bellies. The way that I built that whip is nearly identical to the way that I'm building this whip. That is a full-length tutorial that I'm referring to. This one is not, so make sure you watch that video. It'll really help you. If you don't know how to tie a tapered twist and attach a fall, no problem. Please refer to the 61-minute mark on my stock whip tutorial. I show it very clearly in that video, more clearly than I just said the word clearly. So let's jump into this build. If you haven't already done so, please do hit that subscribe button. I don't usually do intros this long, so I'm sorry if you're bored. Once again, I'm using 1/4-inch steel rod. This piece is 10 inches long. I've ground down the tip of it, and I'm feeding it 1 inch into my sinker cord, and the sinker cord is filled 1 foot with BBs. Next, we're going to be tying on belly number 1, which will be tied on 1 inch before the transition, where the handle ends, the steel ends. Every belly is bound with hockey tape. And then I'm binding each belly with strictly this stuff. This is something that I used a few years back, and it's been a reoccurring thing here and there. This is called lacing tape, and there's a link in the description. It does not stretch at all. That's what's so attractive about this stuff. Here's belly number 1 completed. It's time to give it a roll. Belly number 2 is tied on at the top of the handle. The only belly that's tied on halfway, or I should say at the end of the handle, is belly number 1. Every other belly and the overlay is tied on at the top. Here is some progress on belly number 2, and once again giving it a wrap. And some more of that lacing tape. I find a little more, to elaborate more on the lacing tape, it does not stretch. Artificial sinew can kind of loosen up over time. So it's great because it doesn't seem to do that nearly as much. It's important to pull very tightly, pull nice and tight over the transition of a long whip because there's going to be a lot of pressure because it's a heavier whip. And this is belly number 3, wrapping belly number 3. I'm using a technique that I touched on in my current nylon bullwhip making method. I'm taking this lacing tape and I'm wrapping each loop there so that the edges are touching the previous wrap. And this just causes a very firm transition of the whip. I'm doing this for about 6 to 7 inches on the transition. So there is the final belly. Taking 4 strands, wrapping around the back, and then I'm taking 4 more strands for a 16 plait, and I'm just starting it on the transition here just because it's easier. Once I've established a 2-strand diamond plait, I'll push things into place, which is the top of the handle. Like I said, I do that just to keep things neat. See, now we can just slide that up to the top, no problem. I'll stick that in the clamp and we'll cinch things down. Now I've made my way in 16 plait to the transition. It's time to inject those 2 strands. So these are the 2 strands that are not marked in the middle because we don't want to cause any bulkiness. I talk about this in that tutorial that I talked about, the 12-foot tutorial. Talk all about this stuff. So you can see I'm explaining things as I filmed this, but I didn't really plan to do a voiceover. So you can see I sort of marked it with the lighter, but I just don't want to tie knots or anything to cause bulkiness. So there we go. Those are the middles of those 2 strands. And now we are in 20 plait. So once we cross over this point here, we can kind of carry on to the end of the whip, dropping strands as we go. Real quick, a lot of people have been asking me about the status of the 2021 Los Angeles Whip Convention. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing global situation, it was decided that it is better for it to be canceled for the beginning of next year. There is some good news, though. Adam Winrich is hosting a online whip cracking event. You can post a video of you cracking whips in various routines. There will be various competitions with real whips that you can win, including that one over there hanging from the wall that I am donating into the pool of prizes for the competition. So if you guys want to learn more about how you can enter this competition, check out this video from Adam right over there under the airplane. Click that link and you can learn all about this virtual whip meet. Well, there's Herman Sherman. He is enjoying watching this whip come together. Here it is. There's not much left to do besides the knot. If you look here, this is the tapered twist. You'll notice I've left an inch on those 2 dropped strands that come out of the twist. Why did I do that? The reason I did that is because originally, if I make a tapered twist, I would snip those off and then I would roll the whip. But because all the tension kind of gets equalized and things get kind of pulled and pushed here and there, sometimes those strands that were pre-cut before the roll would retreat back inside the twist and it would weaken that twist. So now I actually roll the whip, which I'm getting ready to do. As you can see here, I leave them like that. I leave them an inch, I roll it, and then at the end, after the roll, then I'll snip them. And this has just yielded a better whip, in my opinion. So that's what I do. It works out better. I just have to add a ferrule there, 2 knots, sandwiching that ferrule in, of course the heel knot, and this thing will be ready to go. But look at that point there, guys. Look at how small it is relative to a normal 4-point fall hitch. So say goodbye to Herman Sherman till a few minutes. And let's go ahead and snip these strands off. Snipping them out. Well, here we are, guys. I waxed this whip last night. It's all ready to go. So to test this out, I'm just gonna go ahead and do a nice, slow, over the head, lazy crack. And we're gonna see how easy we can get this thing to crack. Here we go. Wow. That's crazy. Guys, I can go so slow with this thing. If I go any slower than that, the whip's gonna be dragging the ground and it's still cracking. I have never made a whip this long and heavy with a tapered twist at the end. This thing just flows so well. I encourage all of you to do this. I'm really enjoying this whip, guys. Don, this one might be staying with me, my friend. No, of course not, I'm just kidding. You guys ever made a whip though and you enjoy it so much, like, man, I wish I could keep it. That's how I feel right now. And this isn't like me saying, oh, I'm a great whip maker. No, this is physics at play. Maybe a few years of experience does contribute to the overall result here, but this is physics going on. This whip is very heavy relatively compared to shorter whips. This whip is heavy in the thong, it's heavy in the handle. And you have all that weight that tapers down to a point that's so small. Look at how thick it is up here, the whip. There's a lot of mass, there's a lot of weight up here. And look at the end of that tapered twist. Look at how thin that is. Look at how little air resistance there is. That's what's going on. That's why this whip is cracking so easily. Now normally, if somebody orders from me a 12-foot whip, a 10-foot whip, 3 plaited bellies, that whip is already heavy enough. There's enough mass there that it's gonna have no problem accelerating a standard 4-point fall hitch to the speed which is required to get the whip to crack. Crows are going crazy over there. I think they're mad at me. The thing about a 4-point fall hitch that usually comes standard with my whips is that it's a little bit heavier, but also it's a little bit tougher. So if you're a cattle rancher and you are not really conscious of where you're cracking your whip, you're cracking it over gravel, concrete, you use it strictly as a tool, something that might be better for you is a 4-point fall hitch. There's just fewer strands here. There's 2 strands here at the end as opposed to 4 in a 4-point fall hitch. So if you're a sport cracker, on the other hand, and you're conscious of where you're cracking your whip, you make an effort to go on soft grass, to find a smooth surface, a gym floor, carpet even. If you're conscious of where you're cracking your whip, it doesn't really matter if there's a tapered twist. You don't have to worry about this wearing out. So I'm just gonna have a little bit of fun with this whip here today, guys. It's just, oh man. Getting some crazy echoes. So if you're working on a longer whip with 3 plaited bellies and you're thinking about perhaps trying the tapered twist on it, highly recommend it. I think I'd like to hit this pretzel rod now as a target. This is my excuse to get out here on the semi-unseasonably warm day and have some fun, I guess. That's always fun. This is my favorite thing to do with whips, guys. The clamp squeezed the pretzel and it broke. Thank you for making me look better than I am, clamp. Appreciate that. Might be too much pressure for these little pretzels. I think we'll just, well, see if we can get one more. Time's ticking, it's squeezing it, it's gonna break soon. Just do one of these lazy overhead. Ah, there we go. Let's do a couple more here. This is fun. I'm having a good time. It's nice to get out of the house and hear the beautiful sound of screaming blue jays to my east. Oof, I cheated. Let's do a vertical one, can we? Can we get away with it with this clamp? I think we can. Yeah. Now this is harder. It's harder to do hit vertical targets because you got gravity fighting you, so you have to compensate and aim a little bit high, especially when you're working with a whip this long. There we go. Let's see if we can finish that off. Woo. So I start with the whip in front of me, bring it back, pause, forward. So here we go again. I guess that's the end of the day, guys. Thank you so much for checking this video out. Having a great time. Obviously, as you can see, with this long 10-foot whip, 3 plaited bellies, 20 plat overlay, a tapered twist. You're going from heavy, 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 evenly, all the way down to barely any weight at all. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of the tapered twist. Thanks so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. I have a lot more hands-on videos, actually cracking whips in the making. I don't do a lot of those videos, but I think it makes the channel more fun to have an even amount of tutorials, whip working, and also whip cracking. Plan to meet up with some more whip crackers, some world champion whip crackers in the future. Want to get the podcast going again soon. Also, it's just been so many things going on at one time, trying to balance them all. Let me know what you guys want to see in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Just a little bear with a hood on carrying a lamb around. Something you see every day, right? I'm not one to brag, but man, you talk about scoring big at a thrift store. This is going to go on my top 5 list right there, ladies and gentlemen.